Welcome everybody to the Merlin webinar. I think we can wait another minute and then start the session. Just be patient for another minute. Yeah, so let's start with our Merlin webinar for this month of May. Welcome everybody. My name is Sebastian Birk. I have the pleasure to be the host of today's meeting as Jan is not available. Nevertheless, we have quite a speaker today. It's an old colleague, Ben Delbaere. I was thinking about how to best introduce you, Ben, and I had the idea of calling you a jack of all trades somehow in terms of the senior level you are in. You have gained a lot of experience over the last years in ecological restoration, also in communicating and dealing with ecological restoration and decision makers, policy levels. Science policy interface is also something you are focusing on very much. You have a great experience in dealing with live projects and have a good overview about the live project context across Europe. But your roots are also locally based, and you have not only this overview perspective, the helicopter view across Europe, but also gained experience in working with local communities in your home area, as far as I understand. So it's a great pleasure to have you here on the Merlin webinar today. And you will talk about aspects of the science policy interface. And so the floor is yours, Ben. I'm very much looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Thanks also for the introduction. It's indeed difficult to introduce me. Jack of all trades sounds right, although it also has this kind of, masters of none component to it, but which is true. I call myself rather a hybrid, I think, because indeed my background is I have a master's in vegetation ecology. Worked for a while at the University of Antwerp and Leuven in Belgium. Then I got involved into policy issues. I worked for over 20 years in an NGO, European Centre for Nature Conservation in the Netherlands, where I still live. There I got a lot involved with biodiversity policy, European biodiversity policy, and how that translates into local level. That's a lot of science policy and science society policy interaction that we're dealing with. And since about 10 years, I work as an independent consultant, ecological consultant, mostly still on this science policy interaction with the Commission, but also with, as you say, local parties, architects, advisors, bureaus, municipalities, and so on. And that's a bit what I want to tap from. It's about 35 years of experience that I can tap from. And I want to share here today with you all some examples of what I came across. So it's not a presentation of research or from studies that I've been doing. I'm not a researcher as such. I'm involved a lot with researchers and scientists, but also with policymakers. For example, you mentioned the LIFE program. That's indeed, I'm monitor of running LIFE projects, but also within the LIFE program with a consortium, I'm involved as what they call a hub leader, kind of a contact person on ecosystem services and green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. So kind of compiling the knowledge from projects and trying to feed that to the agency that is supporting the European Commission's DG Environment for policy impact as well. And at the same time, I'm also a partner in BioAgora, the Horizon project. So there I work more with the science community. So yeah, I hope I can pick from these components. I'll share my screen and start my presentation. But again, let's see if it's right. Yeah. So yeah, also what I want to mention, you see here on this slide, Opla, the Opla logo. I know Opla is a partner in Merlin, and Opla, I have a history with Opla together with people from Countryscape, Paul and John, who are in Merlin. I helped set up Opla about almost 10 years ago, meanwhile, as a result of FP7 projects, open as an operas. And Opla, I'm a business partner still in Opla with Countryscape. And Opla clearly is an example of how knowledge can be collected to feed into policy. Also, my slide, the title of my slide is perhaps a bit of my presentation is perhaps a bit misleading because it says removing barriers, but that obviously does not refer to barriers in rivers. Just want to make the link with freshwater, but this talk is not about freshwater ecosystems. It is removing barriers between science and policy, if you wish, between policy and policy, between science and science, how we can do that. And also the focus will not be on ecological restoration, I should say, but it's more kind of general experience in biodiversity conservation at large, so to speak. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. So what I wanted to talk to you about this afternoon is very quickly on who do we actually talk about if we talk about policymakers. Give a very brief feel of what they do and why we should engage with them. We being scientists or conservationists. And then the main focus of the presentation is this, what I mentioned, the sharing of experiences, how to do so. Based on my own experience, I want to give you a number of tips and tricks and what might be of help for anyone in communicating with policymakers. First thing, who do we talk about? Many of you will know if you're involved in Horizon projects or framework projects or other projects. Often the question is, do include the impact, science policy impact of your work. And then people include, yes, we will engage with policymakers, full stop. Which, if you look at it, it's actually rather meaningless because engaging with policymakers can mean anything. There's no such thing as the policymaker, obviously. And so it's quite easy to think of stereotypes in both directions. Also, a scientist might, a policymaker might have a kind of a stereotype image of a scientist or of a site manager. So that's something to be aware of when trying to engage with different groups, with any stakeholder. I think that's the case. Think of these as a very diverse group of people. For example, within policy, I already mentioned the geographical hierarchy. Working with municipalities or with local citizen groups is quite different from high-level European Parliament, European Council, or European Commission levels in between the national and regional governments. And they all have their own kind of different cultures and ways of working. There's also hierarchies in power. The top level, the ministers have quite a different way, a different position in the policy making process than the policy officers, for example, the civil servants doing much of the preparation work and the background work. And then there's also the sectoral hierarchies. Most of us probably in this audience will work in the environmental sphere. It's one of the sectors, but you will know that the finance department or the agriculture department might have quite a different position in terms of policymakers and policy making than the environment sector. So also that is something to be very much aware of and to know a bit what kind of landscape that you talk about when you say we want to engage with policymakers. And that's why, luckily, the last few decades, I think, already. This interactive policymaking has been developing, the co-creation of policy rather than policies being developed by a policymaker somewhere in a silo. I've seen in the last years that there is much more this process of joint activity, because we realize that we depend on each other, that we are in it together, so to speak, and therefore policy making is a joint effort. What do policymakers do? That's maybe an obvious question, but like many of you, I also occasionally have the frustration when working in a research project, or also with the life or otherwise, that the policymakers, be it policy officers or the DG or the unit head, are hard to get response from. Difficult to get reaction, difficult to get them on board in meetings or in exchange processes, because they're so busy. And obviously everybody is very busy, but when I had a presentation recently from a policymaker, and actually the listing is indeed quite long, and often we don't realize really of what policymakers do. Not only the decision makers, who obviously have a role in negotiations and representation and hosting high-level events and what have you, but also the policy officers themselves, the civil servants. Shouldn't forget they have a big portfolio to, often they're understaffed anyway, and they have a big portfolio to prepare and to manage in terms of hosting or developing meetings, organizing meetings, to collect people together, to prepare briefings, to prepare reports, to issue contracts, to outsource work and things like that. To speak at conferences, to prepare the briefing notes of the higher level people. So, and that's a very busy agenda, and that often explains why they are so busy. And it's important for us to realize that they're, to put it very kind of black and white, they're not just sitting there and wait to read scientific papers, so to speak. So it's really something to be aware of in that whole process. But still, we're asked to engage with them, to bring in knowledge, to bring in science, to bring in results, to feed them into the policy process in terms of the policy input. And then the question is, why would we do so? Why do we want to engage with policymakers? We is then the question. I always refer here a bit to we and them, and also that I find a bit not correct, because we often is them as well. Many of us will know that we might also be a policymaker in a certain way, be it in our own families or being part of a voluntary group or a local NGO, what have you. You might be a decision maker, you might be a policymaker. And just like many of the policymakers, the formal policymakers, might have a background in science or in conservation. So this we and them is, I think, a very hazy border that we should again also realize and know that it's not just that straight cut. But then, okay, why to engage with them? There might be various reasons. There might be idealistic reasons, for example. This group wants to restore nature. Gradually, you could say, generally, you can say we want to conserve biodiversity, to reach transformative change. That's kind of idealistical reasons for engaging policymakers, because we know they make decisions on a very large scale. There might also be institutional reasons for our organizations, our research institutes, to engage with policymakers, to get recognition for work done, to ensure funding for the future, to be in the picture, these kind of things. Similarly, for projects, you might have reasons from a project. One is because you want to make policy impact with your project. Simply also because the grant agreement might require you to engage with policymakers. So that might be a reason. Not the best reason, I think, but a better reason probably is that you want to increase the value of your work by also making it policy relevant and making it useful. Actionable is the term as well, actionable knowledge. There might also be personal reasons to engage with policymakers in terms of you might, as mentioned, you might be locally involved and want to engage with policymakers because you want something not to be done. The NIMBY idea, I don't want this motorway being developed through a natural area. You want something positive to be done. You want a green area to be developed. The PIMBY, the please in my backyard idea. That's a personal reason. There might also be a personal reason in terms of you might maybe become a politician, have the ambition to be a politician at some point as well. So, and therefore get engaged into the process. So, but that's all reasons thinking from you as an individual, trying to reach out to policymakers. But I hope it's also getting a bit clear that you should think of them, what's in it for them, the policymaker, also any other stakeholder. It could be a business or a sector representative. They would think, what's in it for me? If you knock on their doors and say, well, hey, we have a piece of information, we have great results, we have knowledge for you, why would it matter to them? Would ask themselves, so what? So that's also something to bear in mind when trying to engage and knowing the reasons for engaging. Hope still with you because I don't see anyone. I've just continued. Okay, so that brings me more to the practical component. So the how to do so. I tried off of about 10 recommendations that I think of that based on what I just described as a framework may help you in designing your engagement with policy. First thing is know who you talk to. And as I mentioned before, you need to dig into the structure of, if you want to, for example, work with the Commission, European Commission, which unit do you need to talk to? Which unit is in charge of a certain piece of legislation or decision making? Which person within those units are the important persons to talk to? Which committee that you need to get in touch with when you want to refer to European Parliament, for example. So know who you talk to. Trust policymakers. I think that it relates to what I mentioned before. They're all humans and often they're allies and not enemies. I know from experience, certainly working with local municipalities, that they are actually completely on our side, or we are on their side. We're thinking the same, but we have different needs in terms of the development of processes. And the same with people in the Commission. They're very much into it, but they have also the need to influence higher level decision makers and need the support from knowledge holders to strengthen their case, so to speak. Think of their needs again, what I mentioned before. Think in terms of what is it that they need. I think an example that I've been working on a number of years ago is for making a policy brief for a biodiversity project on the spontaneous forest development. And there, rather than starting from the stack of scientific papers that I needed to try and summarize into a 4-page policy brief, I started from the side of the policy itself. So from the European biodiversity strategy and from the Habitats Directive and from a whole set of policy documents, looked into the specific objectives and targets mentioned in these policies, so to get a feel of what are the needs, and try to translate these in as smart terms as possible, so that the knowledge in the scientific project, into the papers, could be tagged onto these specific objectives and targets, so that you speak that language, not only the policy language, but also speak in terms of the objectives. Similarly, I had a case at the municipality where I live, where I was asked to develop a biodiversity monitoring network, a kind of a way to monitor for the municipality how they're doing with implementing their biodiversity policy. A very nice policy, but they didn't know how to measure whether they were reaching their targets. So what I did is look into all the policy documents from the municipality, and I got to a list of over 40, 50 objectives that they had put somewhere in their documents: the biodiversity policy, the green plan, the sustainability plan, climate change adaptation plans, whatever. That whole list, when I presented it to them, they were very surprised. Did we all agree that? We were not aware that we had so many objectives listed, and then even they had to implement them. So that's also a very important to kind of find between you and the policymaker, that actually there is this whole list of objectives that they are working on, and how you can then link that to information collection. The third example in that respective, I mentioned this BioAgora project that I'm involved in. BioAgora is just developing the EU Science Service for biodiversity for the European Commission, so for DG Environment and the Joint Research Center. And one of the components in that science service is to answer requests from the Commission. And when a request comes in, one of the first steps is try to understand jointly what is the request really about, what is the actual need. Because you can put it in a phrase, but that might not have the full meaning. So really understanding the needs of the policymaker, of the requester in general, is a very important first step. This I put in because, again, also in terms of thinking of different perspectives. I always like to think, if I hear someone's story, also if it's on a personal level, of a friend or a family or whatever, and you hear somebody complain or give their view on something and moan or whatever, think of the other side as well. Always look at the other perspective. You have the same leaf here of a beech tree. One with the sun in the back and one in the sun in the front, and it looks completely different. And for me, that's always a helpful image to realize, okay, but there's more story, more sides to a picture that you have. So if you bear that in mind when talking to various sectors and various policymakers, that helps. Communication, yeah, you can of course have many webinars about communication, so communicating effectively. Just a few elements in there. A simple one is, this is very much a stereotype. Obviously, I mentioned stereotypes in the front, the scientist on the left, policymaker on the right. But this often is the case. We try to, as scientists and as people presenting knowledge, beside every dot behind the comma and all the details and all certainty and whatever. Whereas the policymaker would just want a smiley, would just want a figure, an indicator, preferably one paragraph. And that's often reality. I was once asked, I happened to be in Brussels for another reason, and I was in an office, and suddenly we had a call, the organization had a call from a European parliamentarian, and they wanted to have input for that afternoon, for a session that afternoon about biodiversity monitoring in Europe, in which I happened to be involved at the time with the European Environment Agency as well. And so there we were forced to, in a very short time, present in one paragraph the issue. What is the state of affairs? What is currently being developed? And what can we expect? So that parliamentarians had a quick picture on what is needed for biodiversity monitoring in Europe. So yeah, this is obviously without nuance, this picture, but again, it demonstrates what often is the issue. Timing is also a big component in policy making. Obviously, the timing differences between science and policy. Scientists, we know, they need a long time to study everything, to dig into, to answer questions, to ask new questions and so on. So that's the nature of science. But then the nature of policy is things have to be happening fast. The example I just gave is a real life example. They need the answer preferably yesterday for various reasons. The powers that are playing, it's not just science that is being brought in, but there's lobbying going on, there's elections in between. People are yeah, it's a very, very busy hive in the policy world. So timing is of the essence. And if it's not easy, if you have a way to find the windows of opportunity by talking to scientists, when is a moment for consultation, when is a moment for decision making, when would be the best moment to present our report, that's very important. So relation building and keeping relations warm is very important to know when best to feed in and engage with scientists. Yeah, being flexible and managing your expectations, it's I think also an important component because again, the policy environment, like the science environment, is very dynamic. Certainly also in terms of people, not only with elections at the very high level, people come and go. Ministers change positions, obviously, as you know, but the same happens also within units and with policy officers. Again, recent work with DG Environment, people that we worked for many years with, they retire at some point, obviously, and people move positions. The Director General for DG Environment recently moved to another Directorate General. So we lose that connection, we lose that support that might be there, or kind of a relationship, and you constantly have to maybe repeat your story, bring again your results, try to convince people why what you bring is important, or what you're doing, who you are. So that again requires constant involvement in establishing of relationships. But also being flexible in priorities of policymakers. You might have a very good case, you have a very good relationship with the policymaker, and at the moment when the decision is to be made, suddenly something might happen. A pandemic might break out, or a disaster might happen. A key report from another direction might come in, and totally your own results are wiped away and being disregarded. That happens. You have to accept it and keep on trying to bring in your case in the policy processes. And also in terms of managing expectations, I already mentioned science is all but one component of input, of knowledge input to the policy making process. There's clearly also input from the industry, from the commercial sector, from interest groups, lobbyists, what have you. It's a big circus in which science has to have find his own niche and bring his own content. So again, there, don't expect that you will change the world by putting in a scientific paper or even a smiley, but realize that forces might be higher than that. But then a way to overcome that is by joining forces as well. This image, Sebastian already mentioned that I'm also involved in some local activities. This actually stems from when I still was at ECNC, European Center for Nature Conservation. Just to give an example of an opportunity that came from the policy side. This picture is from a biodiversity garden, which before 2010 was just a standard lawn and a row of trees in a busy city. Nothing special, very boring from the biodiversity perspective. But then it so happened that 2010 was the year of Countdown 2010. Some of you may still know that, worldwide campaign for biodiversity. And that involved also mobilizing lots of municipalities and businesses and ministries and what have you. And it so happened that the municipality where I'm based, where I was working, Tilburg in the Netherlands, was also a signatory party. So they had signed the Countdown 2010 declaration. So they showed on paper kind of a political will. And this ground actually was from the municipality where we had our offices as well. But the landlord of the building, it's a commercial company, they had taken away the bit of scrubs and the few elements which we felt were more biodiverse because they thought it didn't look very neat. So that was a good way for us, a good moment for us to knock on their door and say, well, look, there's other opportunities to use this space and to make it more attractive rather than just have a lawn that nobody would use. But it was just a decorum. And then we mobilized the municipality. We got to talk to the local councillors and to the civil servants. And they thought this is a great opportunity to turn our paper into reality. And they supported us and the landlords to turn this lawn into a biodiversity garden, which is still there. I've been counting butterflies in this area, and it's still ongoing, and it's still flourishing. So the management is a bit of an issue, but it did work in terms of bringing real life change in the city. Meanwhile, watching the clock, hurry up a little bit. So use opportunities, that was one example there. I think in terms of, well, another opportunity, just want to highlight that as well, again, from these different levels. With the live program, I was involved in a conference, a workshop 2 years ago, I think it was, in the light of what's happening in Ukraine now, looking forward and trying to find a way to help recover Ukraine from the perspective of nature-based solutions. So we were offering knowledge input into when the moment is there to recover Ukraine by applying nature-based solutions. And we were presenting live examples from a number of live projects in that conference. This was a high-level conference. The commissioner at the time, I think Vicius was there. It happened to be in Lithuania. So there was a lot of press attention to that moment as well. But also there was a keynote speech from the Director General at the time from DG Environment who came to give a speech to the conference. And in the evening, it so happened that we had done our job. That is the people from the live program. We had moderated sessions and done everything. So in the evening, we're having a drink in the bar. And it so happened that I was standing at the bar and the Director General was there at the same bar. And she came over to me saying, well, this is apparently a better spot to order drinks. And that was a good opportunity for me to have a chat with her and talk not only about the live program, but also about the Biagora project that I was involved in and the science service that we're developing. And she was so interested in that afterwards we had a small email exchange, and as a result, she asked for a lunch event to be organized at DG Environment by the Biagora project. So an opportunity that you cannot orchestrate, that you cannot organize, it just happened by being at the bar. And in fact, after this session, I will go to Brussels for having that lunch event tomorrow with DG Environment on that. So that's how things happen, and yeah, again, being flexible and use an opportunity that arises. Yes, ambition is also a point. I'm nearly there. Try to be ambitious. Often you hear in project developments and trying to make campaigns, again, also for communication, for reaching out to policymakers. Well, let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Yes, there's something to be said for it because you get easy results, but actually, why don't turn it around? Start with a high-hanging fruit. Because that takes more time, that takes more ambition, that takes more energy to put in, and don't leave it to the end because then your energy or time might be gone. So I would actually try with high ambition, not only high ambition in terms of who to invite for a conference. Why not invite the commissioner and then see who in the end will come if you have a conference or an event, but also high in terms of your result, your content ambition, your project, not just don't be too modest. Try to make sure that you have a good connection with a policy objective and go for it. Be ambitious in that respect. So be ambitious. And then perhaps the very last recommendation I want to make, and also again speak from personal experience, don't be disappointed if you don't see any impact. I think it's there's nothing more difficult. Well, probably there is something more difficult, but it's very, very hard to demonstrate, to measure policy impact from what you're doing. Whether you're an NGO or a project, a research project, or a site managing organization, to really demonstrate that you made an impact to policy is very hard to do. But yeah, again, keep on trying. Don't stop. I'll leave it to this. Again, I hope you're still with me. I see Sebastian coming up. So
Yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben.
Just maybe before I give the floor to you, Sebastian, because I know we have half an hour to talk, I would also invite everybody to share with us their experiences, because what I may have said here might be completely different with other people's experience. So I'm very interested to hear experiences and maybe even.
No, absolutely. This is a good remark. So please feel free, dear participants, to either place your question or comment into the chat, or even raise your hand, and then we can start a live discussion here. That's also fine for me. I actually have a couple of questions, Ben. You stimulated some thinking on my end. I was wondering, maybe to start with a very practical question. I still remember discussions we had in my ETC times, working for the Environment Agency, European Environment Agency, about offering some science service for decision makers, policymakers, to have like a quick evaluation of a current situation, like flooding or drought period, and then have scientists reacting to questions or requests that policymakers may have. And I realized that it's really hard in the science environment to find openness towards contributing to such a service, because it requires enormous flexibility. You have to be quite quick, and you have to be certain in what you say, although you know there's so much uncertainty related to it. I'm wondering, how do you address it in the BioAgora project?
Well, it's definitely a very well-known issue indeed. It relates to what I mentioned in terms of this timing. A key component in there that we're developing in BioAgora is this pool of knowledge holders. We are kind of developing a community of practice, not developing from scratch, obviously, because there's plenty of existing networks of experts for various themes around in Europe. So we were making an inventory of these existing networks, and we have done a social network analysis as well on the big players and how they're organized and how they can be connected. And so apart from a technical component, and there will be a web platform, and there will be a process to link the question to the scientific community. There's a very big effort going into what we're currently calling the Knowledge Agora, so a community of practice of knowledge holders, and then is to have a big enough pool. That will take time, obviously. Yeah? In the beginning, it will be challenging to find the right expert with the right time and the right knowledge to feed in. But if this is a growing community which sees the results of the knowledge put into policy making, then we believe that will lead to more flexible process. But that's still a long way to go. The project is halfway now, and actually this is one of the components of our discussion tomorrow with the Commission, also in terms of reward system and then how that will work.
Yeah, I see. Interesting. Astrid has written a question into the chat. What would you recommend an early career scientist if they'd ask you how to best get in contact with the right policymakers?
That's a very good question. With the right, well, that's already the question. The right policymaker. It's just being alert to what's happening. So follow a number of processes in Europe, either through social media or to their own press groups, so that you see what is happening and what are the names that pop up. But also utilize the opportunities, such as Green Week, for example, is coming up, or conferences that are there to attend, either online or in person, and listen to the types of presentations and discussions going on, and be blunt enough to talk to the people, walk to them. They're just human, just like everybody else is. So speak to them, say who you are, say hi, and say, well, look, this is what we're doing. What are you doing? And try to understand. It's a long process. It's not. There's no such list as that you can just tap from and say, okay, now I call the right policymaker. It's a long process to identify. And as I said, be aware that policymakers change seats, so you might have to redo the whole exercise. So networking is really important.
Thanks, Ben. I was also a bit puzzling about you several times in your talk. You've said we, and you put yourself into a certain position. And then I was wondering, what do you mean by we? Who is we here? And then I realized, or I thought I realized, you mean the knowledge holders, those who have the knowledge. And then still, I would differentiate. Not sure about this group now here, but we all have different roles and positions we take. And there's, for instance, the scientific community on the one hand, and then there's also NGO-related activists positioning. And I'm wondering, would you still say we and bring these two groups together, or is it something where you would say, no, I actually meant the scientists as the knowledge holders, and maybe the colleagues working in NGO contexts probably should have a different approach to things.
It's in this case, indeed, where I refer to we and the policymakers, I don't know who's actually in this group, but I thought of we as Merlin participants and partners in the project, and related. But obviously, it's we also the biodiversity community, the conservation community at large, science as well as activist groups or NGOs or site managers or what have you. But also, as I said, we're all we. It's a joint process. It's co-creation. That's a buzzword, but I once gave a talk to I think it was the Soil Biodiversity Conference about stakeholder engagement, where I just presented a story, my personal life story, where in each phase of my life, I was a different type of stakeholder, because I'm a father as well. I'm a son as well. I take part in the elections. I'm in a volunteer group locally. So and all these stakeholders have a different way of looking at things. It's not by coincidence that I put this beach leaf in there as well. And I think that's the important thing when we talk about we and them. It's us. It's joint effort. We're allies. I think that's really something important to realize. Maybe just also to exemplify, when I started in European Center for Nature Conservation, I was in my 20s. I started in this global European network on conservation. And what struck me at that time was that there's so much competition between like-minded organizations. There's all these green organizations all were fighting for the budget and fighting for attention and fighting for recognition. So I felt actually that's not right. We should be part of one community and have a joint effort. So, and that holds also for the link with policymakers. We have the same goal, the same objective.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just looking into the chat. Yeah. Phyllis has raised the question. Thanks, Astrid, for raising that. Beyond the technical and quantitative, black and white written material, do you think trusted sources and real people can have an impact?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's often a very personal thing. I mean, you can put whatever in writing, but trusted people and just people as well, people who speak sincerely and authorities are recognized or whatever in dialogue. I think there's nothing that can beat that. I mean, you can have as nice leaflets and brochures and smileys as you can imagine, but in the end, it's human interaction. That's why also meeting in person. I mean, obviously for these kind of webinars, it's very useful, but meeting in person is a very, very important thing as well. Try to find this trust and understanding. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, against this background, I was also wondering while you were going through your talk, whether it is not misleading to really talk about policymakers, because when you really look deeper, what you mean by that, it could be all kinds of roles that people play in a process. And obviously, well, one would say, well, it's not those who create the knowledge, but those who need the knowledge to act on it. And from a practical perspective, also to projects, would you say that policymaker mapping would be useful always, just to understand, like you were saying, doing a social network analysis, you'd also need to understand, okay, the group of policymakers that we need to address, who are they in my context, as you said, and also write names behind it and start approaching them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's not just saying, well, we will talk to DG Environment because that's too generic. You need names of individuals and know what's their portfolio and what's their role. And European Commission prepares the policy for the European Parliament and European Council. So they are not the decision-making body, so to speak. And the same holds for ministries, where you have the ministry, the civil servants preparing for the minister. And at local level, same thing as well. So you need actually a bit of both. You need those who are holding the pen and preparing all the documents and doing the research and collecting the knowledge. But at the same time, use the opportunities to talk to a minister or a council member or a parliamentarian to feed them. But that they are the ones who need the smileys, whereas the civil servants are the ones who need the abstracts at least, and then maybe also the papers, the bigger picture. But it's different levels of detail of content and also different levels, to go back to a previous question, different levels of uncertainty that you need to accept. A smiley doesn't come with an asterisk, look, this is all with so much certainty, yes or no. That's in your paper, that is in the background. But that I know is difficult for scientists to say, well, yeah, it's like this, because we know there's much more story behind it.
In this line, what is your experience in the value of policy briefs?
They shouldn't be overestimated, but it's very, very. I think they're very valuable in terms of giving a quick picture to those the policy officers and the civil servants. I don't think for a parliamentarian, maybe the first bit where you would have, say, maximum 5 recommendations for policymakers. A good policy brief starts with the recommendations for policy based on the policy needs. That might be the extract that is useful for tweet style inputs to parliamentarians. So in that respect, it's very useful. What I think would make them more useful if because often is the access to these policy briefs that makes it difficult. You might have a very nice policy brief, but then how do you get them, the policy briefs, to the right persons? It's that combination. Know who you need to send it to or give it to or present it to, and make sure that it's easily retrievable also in a repository. I mean, so the Merlin marketplace, that might be a good way, but that's only for those who know the Merlin website. So you need a whole range of channels that you feed it through.
Yeah. Also related to that, Charlotte is asking, do you think a field visit suits policymakers rather than an inside lecture?
Also, yes. From personal experience, certainly at the local level, I've seen that happening, where if you take people on safari and make it a nice event, don't overdo it, but just bring them into nature and show them the issues. It makes it much more easy to at least talk about it and not be kind of sent away like, yeah, it's not so relevant. There's more important things. But also to realize what it actually takes. And it happens as well with the higher levels. It's more difficult if you do a European conference, for example, because people are not as attached to the situation. But yes, field visits, laboratory visits, real life visits definitely help.
Mm-hmm.
But then timing is really challenging because travel and logistics is not easy.
So, well, I would have a final question to you. If no one else is asking through the chat, I'll start to ask my final question. I understand that all this belongs somehow to a transdisciplinary process of really engaging not only the different scientific disciplines, academic disciplines, but also society in general and the roles people and organizations play in society. Based on your big experience, if I may say it so bluntly, what are the soft skills needed to get such a process, such a transdisciplinary process running smoothly or even successfully?
I think I've mentioned some of them in my presentation, or at least hinted at them. This trying to understand how other people look at things, kind of this empathizing with different viewpoints on the world, different worldviews, trying to understand at least, not to accept it necessarily or think the same, but at least understand things are different. Listening to each other as part of that same kind of understanding, listening and accepting, really understanding the issues, jointly identifying objectives, joint objectives if possible, those kind of things. I think that's the type of soft skills that you would need, I think, to make that happen.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Excellent. So let's close the session for today. So you have some travel to make, some trip ahead. So bon voyage to you, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks.
Many thanks for all participating, and also for you, Ben, to give us insights in a very personal style of presentation. Highly appreciated.
I hope it helped. Thanks a lot. Glad to be with you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you also from my side.